Hi, everybody. This is Pat K. I would like to take this opportunity to quickly introduce Charles G. He's an amazing man. He's got a hell of a program. It's been clean for a long time. And here he is, sharing a little bit of his experience, strength, and hope. So have a listen and enjoy. Thanks.
A recovery program, I wouldn't have stayed clean. I had to hit a meeting every day, get a sponsor, and do all the things people said, and change my way of thinking, and just start to incorporate it into my life. A lot of times people they don't understand when they first come in what going to meetings is. It depends on how you do it. You don't just go to a meeting for an hour and a half. It's in your head. I'm an addict. I'm thinking about shit all the time. So I'm at work. I know what I'm going to do tonight. I'm thinking about that meeting. I'm going to go home, then I'm going to change, and I'm going to get down to that meeting. You know, that's more than just the meeting. It's more than just the hour and a half. My whole day, I know I'm going to do this thing. Plus, I take the time to get there, and I always hang out afterwards. I'm the last person to leave usually. So the structure of hitting meetings, it's way more than just sitting in a room and sharing. It's making a whole change in the way I did stuff. And it was absolutely essential to me to do that, because it just like that reading in the Just for Today said, that was explained to me when I got clean, that look at what I did to use. I used all the time. I used, everything. I used pretty much, and then when I wasn't using, I was finding the ways and means to get more, as it says in the literature. And so when I got clean, actually, if I was to add up the amount of time I spent to be free of active addiction and just to go back into a way of living, actually it's a bargain. It's actually easier to stay clean than it is to use. Although I know at first, or when we're having a hard time, it doesn't seem that way. And sometimes it can be really difficult. But the funny thing is, it's not recovery that's hard. It's not, when people are having a hard time, it's probably the disease of addiction that's giving them a hard time. The recovery is not a hard thing. Once we get back into active recovery mode, there's hope. And that's kind of what I think, I usually don't plan speeches. I don't think much about, exactly what I'm gonna say. Sitting here and talking and just like hanging out before the meeting, I decided that I wanted to just have a hopeful message. And because I think that that's our business. That's NA's business, is hope. And because we come from such desperate places. And I remember the first time I spoke, I thought, because I took like speech class when I was in high school. And the first time I was asked to speak, it was the Friday night meeting at the Salvation Army. And I thought it was supposed to be like a speech, and I asked my sponsor, and he said, well, just tell your story. He said, basically, you just get to share longer and go into a little more detail, and just, our stories are our message. We're all here, we're clean, some of us for a long time, some of us for less time, but still it doesn't really matter. Any addict staying clean for even a short period of time, it's pretty amazing, and I think back to my early recovery, and I was absolutely astonished when I got a week clean. I don't know about you, but I used every single day, all day for years. And so to not use was phenomenal. And when I discovered drugs as a teenager, when I discovered getting messed up, it was obvious that I had found something that was a big release to me. And and it was actually fun. One of the things younger people might not realize is in the early 70s, drugs were pretty cool. The drug culture was hip. I'm sorry, but it was. It just, there wasn't all this crack and heroin and shit all over the place, and people were smoking dope and going to concerts, and it was actually okay. The junkies, it wasn't the way it is right now. But the end of the road, like, we saw the people doing the heroin and the speed, and they were pretty scary. I remember when I was in high school, a good friend of mine, as we know, it doesn't really matter what or how much we use, but the fact is, being an addict, if you don't use anything, that matters. If you use all the time, that matters. So there is something to be said. It's called Narcotics Anonymous. And so we are talking about drugs here. And the thing of it is that I remember a good friend of mine in high school started taking drugs, and he went way faster, and like into addiction than I did, and he went way ahead of me, and it was scary to see this guy. I mean, he went from being like kind of like just having fun and hanging out and enjoying ourselves, and he just went right off the deep end. He was really, luckily the guy's okay today, but it was weird seeing a personality get completely changed and obsessed with the drugs, and this is back when I was like 15 or 16, and I wasn't really, I wasn't prepared for that, and I didn't like the idea of being addicted. I thought about it when I started realizing I was becoming dependent psychologically on using and jonesing, and I remembered when I first discovered what jonesing was, and actually it was weird. It was like being hungry, or thirsty, and yet it was a substance, and that's a weird feeling, and I didn't like it. I had enough of a conscience that there was a part of me that said, it was like a balancing act. The good part of me was like, this is weird. I'm not so sure I'm crazy about this. But the stuff was cheap. It was all over the place. It was in the culture in those days. So what the hell, And for me, it was a steady progression throughout my using. Now, when I did get kind of the brakes kind of got slammed on when I was 17, and it was cool because it was actually a spiritual awakening. And it wasn't like I got busted or thrown into jail or detention or something. I kind of had this spiritual awakening where I thought drugs are not the answer. And so I started doing yoga and meditating, and I did stop doing drugs for a short period of time. And that was a really valuable lesson. It would pan out later on in my life, because what it did was it showed me how addicted I was. I was able to white knuckle it for a while and not use, and I just ended up going back to using. I really didn't have any say-so over it. And then the progression of the disease, because with me, the progression of the disease kind of just gradually progressed over time, and it would just get a little worse and a little worse, and I would do a little more, and I would do a little more of this and a little more of that. Life would be getting a little bit more unmanageable, and it took a period of time. But the only using that I did that was actually innocent was probably when I was maybe in 10th grade for a little while. There was no thought about what I was doing, and it was fine. And then once I realized that I had to have it, it started to become a monkey on my back. And then I got the spiritual awakening when I realized for sure this wasn't the way to do it. But then I had no choice. I ended up doing it anyway. And then I became an adult. So once I became an adult, I was my own man. I moved away from my parents. Then I could damn straight do whatever I wanted. And so that just progressed. And the thing of it is, what we say in our literature is, we'll do all these different things to prop ourselves up. And so that for a while drugs work, and it's different for different people. Some people go straight to hell, other ones take a little bit of time. But I'm not going to sit in a meeting and say that it didn't work. Of course it worked. If drugs didn't work, if the first time you took drugs nothing good happened, you'd stop immediately. There's obviously an enticement. For some people that enticement might be 3 weeks and they're on the floor. For some people it might be 3 years. The floor is where we're going here. The floor is definitely the jails, institutions, and death. That's where we're headed if you're an addict. There's no choice. You either stop or it finishes us. For me, it was a slow progression, but what I was doing as a young adult was I was filling my life up with all kinds of distractions so that I didn't have to watch the spiritual aspect. And I can remember, I'm from Beloit, it's an industrial town, and for the first couple of years out of high school, I was working in a factory, and there's these little moments of clarity that I got in my addiction, and this is part of a higher power thing. But I can remember getting out of work, and this is like just this thought, this feeling is it's part of my psyche, and it was like a vision almost. And I remember and I didn't drive in those days, and I remember getting off work and riding my bike to go to the liquor store after work, and I remember looking through this fence at the liquor store, kitty corner over there, and I looked at it, and I'm gonna go get some alcohol, and then I'm just gonna do whatever. And I remember thinking to myself, you're gonna go completely into the toilet and you're gonna leave those people the rest of the day. That's gonna kill you. You know what I'm saying? And just like that, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like 20, probably 20, the drinking age was 18 in those days. I was probably 20 years old. And, but it was like a blast, like, you know where this is going. You know, you are on the fast track to full-blown addiction. And I knew that, and I just, you know, and the thing is, I was never one of these addicts that lied to myself about my disease. I always knew full on, no problem. A preacher could come to me, my parents, my girlfriend, anybody. You're a waste of, so tell me something I don't freaking know. Duh, you think? I get shit-faced every single day and I'm wasted on anything you're gonna hand me. Gee, I don't have a problem, come on. You know, but I don't care. And I figured that makes me a real hardship case. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't care. That's bad. I mean, I always figured the people that weren't really sure, they're almost in a better state of mind in some ways, because then if they really find out, they might have more of a chance of quitting. With me, I'm screwed here, you know. And actually, that's the way it was. And I kept doing different things all the time. I kept, like, you know, then the factory job was a piece of crap, so I moved to Madison. Well, that was like a fresh start. You know what I'm saying? So the addiction could get sort of kicked into another gear, and the tapestry became a different color, so I could then coast on that for a while. Then the next year, I threw all my stuff in my parents' house and I hitchhiked all over the country. Another, keep propping myself up, keep like holding up. The addiction's still going with me everywhere I go. And I did that, you know, and then I'd come back and get another place to live and another girlfriend. Then I'm out of here. I'd just take off again and hit the road again. And then the next year. And I did that for 5 years, every year. Well, ironically, I have to say it worked. I mean, it worked from the standpoint that I didn't feel the need to stop using. I was making the addiction work for me. I was making my life, and those experiences on the road were really good. I mean, I won't take that back. They were, you know, I don't think I would have done that if I was clean. I don't think I would have been crazy enough to just fly out with a backpack and $30 in my pocket and say, "To hell with it, I'm out of here." You know, and so what? You know, I don't. That stuff I wouldn't go back and undo. You know, yeah, I suppose if I hadn't been using, and I think a lot of us probably ask ourselves that question: would I go back and undo what I did in active addiction? And I think that's an unwise thought process. I just don't think it's a good place to go. You know, I came from my active addiction, and I just don't think it's wise for me to say, well, I probably would have, some things probably would have been better, you know, and I probably would have, you know, avoided some suffering and stuff, but it's just not a good thought. I generally don't go back. I try not to go back and second guess what happened. But anyway, then you know, in the last few years of the addiction, of active addiction, it became ridiculous. I mean, it was actually, if it wasn't so tragic, it would be funny. You know what I'm saying? Just the stuff I was doing to try to, you know, to make myself feel good. And the substances weren't working. Didn't matter what I took. It didn't matter. I get off on it technically, like I get messed up, but spiritually I was so bankrupt I couldn't enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? So that, I mean, I might be, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the chemical substances or the cocktails or whatever it is, mixtures that I would take, it didn't matter at that point, because I really was ready to get clean. And I remember my last year using was a weird year, because I had all these different things happen to me that year that were like, they weren't very good. But you know, in relative terms, they weren't really life-threatening either. Probably my best friend died that year, and that was a gut level experience for me, because that was this messing around with life. You know, just kind of like, I can quit one of these days. Yeah, I got to get my shit together one of these days. One of these days didn't happen for this guy, Greg. John knows that guy. And one of these days, and Greg was a really spiritual, really good person. I mean, he was a screw up, but he was a good person, you know. And I mean, he had a lot of insight. The guy, I learned a lot of. We had some good discussions. I mean, I had a lot of. He turned me on to some pretty good books and some pretty good philosophy, and you know, he definitely. And I knew him. I knew that he was like me in the spiritual sense, that he knew this was no way to go. this was not the way to do it. The substances, the using drugs was not the way to do things. And he probably, I can't say that, but I've always guessed, he probably thought he'd get his shit together someday. Yeah, when I'm older, one of these days. He made it to 29 and it stopped, from there. And that had a profound effect on me. And I honor his memory every day I sleep. I don't think about him every day now, but I would say for a couple of years I did. And I still think of him from time to time and think, well, I'm doing one thing, I'm not using it. But anyway, that was something that happened. There's a big story with that. I mean, there's all kinds of little backstories that go to that. But that year, all these different things happened to me, like almost losing my job and my friend dying and all these different things. And at the time, it was really a bummer, but when I thought back after I got clean, I was actually really lucky because I got, I was scraping along the bottom for like 3 years with active addiction. And then in that last year, I started getting slapped around a little bit. And luckily, and those slaps were pretty gentle, really. I mean, my best friend dying was pretty rough. I mean, for him, it was the end. But when I think back how it could have been and the things that could have happened to me, and it's, well, that my friend dying was pretty intense. But the rest of it, I was getting slapped around and I was getting woken up to the point where I got to, and my employer kind of intervened and said that she would pay for my insurance if I would go to a treatment center. And so I kind of knew that, I said, this is the red carpet being rolled out here. This is a higher power thing. It's like, I don't know. But the part of me was still doubting it. Part of me was still like, I don't know. But then I was I felt like something or someone was kind of grabbing me by the back of my collar, just kind of pulling me on, like, come on, and let's go. And part of me is kind of not really struggling. And part of me is going, yeah. I mean, if not now, when, right? So but for me, then I went and I picked up the phone and I called. She gave me some phone numbers to call. I called around and I found this treatment center, MFI. That was out on the Westside. It's not there anymore, but anyway, I went to that place and, but anyway, I called them and they set up an assessment for me. I said, it's not an emergency, just get me in. So it was like a week from the time I called them. Well, and then I thought, okay, if I'm gonna go to this outpatient thing or I'm gonna go to this treatment center, I'm gonna be clean for a few days before I go. That didn't work. I tried self-willing it. I was using 1 day at a time. I was like, okay, I'll be clean 5 days when I go. The day 5, forget it. Okay, I'll be clean 4 days when I go. Finally, the day before, I got up, which was February 2nd, 1987, which was the last time that I used. Went to work. Now, I couldn't use at work because, I knew I'd get fired, so I kind of white-knuckled it through the day because the boss was watching me. And she was an old hippie. She could see right through it. There's no way I could hide it from her if I was using. So anyway, I went and after work, and this is kind of I did score some stuff after work because I knew I was going to this outpatient thing the next day. And I went down to the Yahara River down between the railroad trestles over there off of First Street in East Washington. And that's still a powerful place to me. I still go there when I have to reflect, when I want to reflect stuff. I've gone there lots of different times when I want to let stuff go or when I want to just contemplate. So that's like a power place for me. And I grew up around railroad tracks, so I just feel right at home around the tracks, I guess. But I was down there, and that last night, I'm lucky because my last night using was actually very spiritual. And it was, I felt, but I didn't realize the words at the time, but it was surrender. It's just like, I can't do this. This is like, I'm up against the wall here. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't particularly wasted. I started using a little bit, and I said, what is this? Why am I putting these substances into my body to make myself feel good? What's this gaping hole I have in here that I'm trying to fill up? And I had this conscious contact thing going with my higher power, and it was a very interesting thing because the two major parts of my prayer that night were, one of them was the panic of having to quit for the rest of my life. I gotta go for the rest of my life. There's no way I can control this? Well, luckily I'd heard the expression one day at a time, and it was really, I haven't had a lot of profound revelations. Most of my recovery, throughout my entire recovering process, has been gradual. I hear people talk about, I did my 4th step and 5th step, and oh, it was a ton of bricks. Never happened. Never happened to me. I've never had anything like that happen in recovery. I get little glimpses now and then that are profound. But when I worked step 4 and 5, it's very methodical. By the time I get done with step 4 with my sponsor, my body worked through everything. I got rid of that, let go of that, focused on this. Step 5 is just kind of cleaning house and getting ready to go on to the hard step. Step 6. Everybody thinks 4 and 5 are hard. Child's play compared to 6. Child's play compared to 6. Step 4 and 5 are hard. But step 6, I actually have to do something. You know, I could go back and look at the past and fess up and celebrate some of the good stuff that I did. But step 6, I got to look at these character defects entirely. Entirely? That's the word in that step. I don't know about you, but boy, entirely doesn't work that well for me. That's a hard one. But that's why this step is hard. If you're really going to work at that word, entirely has to be there. And any good sponsor is going to insist on that, so which mine did when I did my first 4 step. But anyway, so what I'm saying is the last night using is that profound understanding of one day at a time. That it's not a slogan, it became an actual reality. It actually, I can still feel it, I can still remember it. I can still remember standing there looking up at the sky, this crescent moon up there, and I can remember being panicking because I said, this is it, I'm up against the wall here, and all of a sudden, I have to do it for the day. I only have to do it for the day. It's not a slogan. It's not a cute little freaking bumper sticker with the little frills around it, like the blue and the shiny letters, you know, that AA has. It's not, that's not it. It's not a one day at a time bumper sticker. It's you know, just for today. It's not just the cover of a book. That's a freaking excellent book. It's not just that. You know what I'm saying? It's an actual reality. And when that hit me, I was like, wow. And it's still, I still say it, I still feel it. I can still feel it. I will not sit here and tell you that I'm never going to use again. I don't have that kind of power. You know, today I'm not going to use. And then, you know, it's like 8 o'clock at night. Okay, maybe if everything works right tomorrow I won't use. But you know what I'm saying? I don't. And then the other one was that hole that I was talking about in my chest. I needed courage to go in there. And I wasn't thinking about the serenity prayer, but the word courage was what I used. And I can remember thinking, God, give me courage. I need courage in here. And I think that was the right thing to ask for. Because I didn't say, God, bail me out. You know, that's classic addict thinking. God, just help me. Well, no, by asking for courage, I hit the right button. It was like, courage implies I'm willing to do something here, but damn it, I need help doing it. So when you ask for courage, that's the thing to shoot for, because my dad used to say, God helps those that help themselves. And there's a real truth to that. If I'm not willing to help myself, I'm not going to get anywhere. As soon as I become willing, then I can get all this inspiration. And whatever the higher power, for me, you can call it God. You know, I've got like a bunch of different names for it. I'll call it Rama, Krishna, Allah. I mean, I'll go on. How much time you got? I'll give you a different name for it. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. You know, you can call it higher power. Our concept of a loving higher power that's in our literature is flawless. You know, I can't, but the word God is written a lot in our literature. And that's, I say that because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. I'm not one of these people that had a problem with God. It's the exact opposite for me. I would not have come through the door. Because I knew I wasn't staying clean without God's help. And if this had been like just a non-God thing, I would have found something else. Because I knew that there's no way I stayed clean without that higher power's help. There's no way. Meetings were important, my sponsor was important, but the higher power that I could constantly call on. You know how many times using came right into my face, especially with alcohol. Shit's legal, man. That was the main drug that I did. Yeah, I had to have God right there I had to have God right next to the cheese in the grocery store. You know, I'm just minding my own business. There's the eggs, there's the cheese, there's the frickin' alcohol. You know what I'm saying? God's got to be with me the whole time. You know what I'm saying? But also the God of my understanding, there's no big burning bush There's no miracle. It's like, go to a meeting. You know, God help me, call your sponsor. You know what I'm saying? God, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's very tangible. And I have to say that because, you know, the God of our understanding or our higher power, as we have, whatever, it doesn't matter. You know, there are people who have a hell of a time with God, word of the higher power. You don't need that. You can have your higher power be the principles and concepts and the structure of the meeting. I think the meeting list is a really good higher power. The physical meeting list, not a doorknob, not the sun, a piece of paper that shows you a schedule of what you can do with your week. I had mine in my pocket all the time. I used to just look at it. You know what I'm saying? I'd look at it over and over again. Let's see here, this whole week here, let's see, I can do this day I've got to work here, but I can get this one, you know, and I mean, and I had to use the other fellowship when I got clean because of my work schedule. I had to have a meeting a day. There was no way there wasn't as many NA meetings in those days either. And by the way, this guy here was at my first NA meeting, Kevin was. I mean, and that to me, that was really cool. And when I see people like that, I was at Asbury one night and Kevin and Tim B and Kathy L were all there, and 3 people that were at my first meeting were in the same room, and this was only like 8 months ago. Anyway, so talking about all of that stuff that got me here is important because the spiritual stuff, and I'm fond of saying this when I'm in meetings, is, you know, I can't tell someone how to work, you know, a program. Each person has to find out for themselves how to work it. And I often say, you can't work my program because it would kill you. I can't work your program. I have to work my own program. And the biggest thing is that I have to work it. And you know, if I were to let somebody else, you know, if I were to look at someone else and then judge myself, I could trip over that. I could get into all kinds of trouble. The biggest thing is that we have to work a program. And for me, it's a daily thing, constantly. And the one thing is, it took me years of working the 12 steps before I at some point realized that I'm working all 12 steps all the time. And have anybody with a lot of time in ever noticed that? Have you noticed that there's a point in your recovery when if you just reflect back, like, I've worked all 12 steps, but not only that, they're all kind of running. It's integrated into me. It's just always happening. Right now, I'm working on going into doing another 4th step. So yeah, technically I can say, yes, I am doing a certain thing to work the steps. I'm reviewing the first 3 steps in preparation for and starting to work on step 4. But at the same time, I'm working all of them at the same time. And that's a beautiful feeling. And it took me a lot of years to get to that point where I just felt totally at ease with all 12 steps going all the time. And then the constant, you know, as anybody will tell you, it requires the maintenance to also focus on, you know, to go back and now I feel that I need to clean house. And this is pretty good because there is some stuff that I want to work on. And at the same time, I'm not too scared of it. A little bit of, I'm not too scared so much from what I'm going to find because I've done a lot of introspection in my life. It's more like I just don't like working. I mean, shit. I gotta freaking call my sponsor. Shit. I know what he's going to do. He's going to have me write about powerlessness. You know, how much time are we going to spend on this? Probably a lot of time, actually. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's just like, you know, it's that way. It's that way. But, you know, it's not that I mind working the steps per se. I'm just a slow worker. And I don't think it's important for people to mirror other people. I think it's really important that we find our own recovery program. I will say this, though. There's a positive way that we can inspire each other. I mean, I can remember this woman, a good friend of mine in the program that I've known for a while, who was going through a lot of changes, and she had done a thorough 4th and 5th step and was really in the midst of working steps 6 and 7. And I must have been in tune with her. It was just her and I talking after a meeting. And I must have been in tune with her because she was sharing about what was happening to her as she was letting go of these character defects. And I must have been in tune with it. And it was inspiring, you know what I'm saying? It was like, she wasn't preaching at me, she was just like beaming about all this shit she was doing was paying off. And she's not stupid enough to think, oh yeah, now I'm all done with it. She knows it's an ongoing process. But she was doing some essential recovering. So we do inspire each other. So I didn't have to compare, and she wasn't talking about minutia. I don't care about the details. She was talking about the spiritual principles of the steps. The actual details of the steps it's the nature, the exact nature of the runs in step 4 and 5, and our character defects. It's the character defect and it's what they are. The specifics are important to each person working the step, but as far as the bottom line goes, once we've let go of character defects, they're not worth worrying about. So we only have to, it's hard to describe it, but it's the nature of our disease that's really the key thing. And how we get to it, each person has to decide. When I got clean, there was no step working done. There was a IP working step 4 in Narcotics Anonymous, and that's pretty cool. That was around, and I can remember before that was printed. And when that came out, people were like grabbing it because we needed help. People wanted, I think sponsors needed it too, to try to help people. So our literature, when I got clean, there was only the basic text. And as these books came out, it's really good. I've really, and the latest book, Living Clean, that's just incredible. I mean, the literature is definitely something that it's a good thing to have. It's a good thing to use. I use my literature kind of like reference books. This thing I get delivered to my email every day, so I tend to read it, on my computer when I'm looking through stuff. But anyway, I wanted to share about that. And it gets, I don't really like doing the horror stories so much about using, because I think all of us got to where we got here. We got here by doing the things that we did in active addiction. And everybody's going to be different. There's no, I remember sitting in the jail meeting, and I do the hospitals and institution thing. And in jail meetings, and people who have done it know that, does this meeting end at 8 o'clock?
No, it's harder if you go.
Okay, well, I can wrap it up. But I can wrap it up if we end at 8, so I don't want to run it too long. But yeah, so anyway, I can remember at this H&I meeting, there was, because we always have a little crosstalk, there was one of the inmates that was like looking at me, like, and we were kind of sharing, and he was sort of saying, you have been died for 10 years. So I didn't say anything to the guy till it was my turn to share. And I said, well, the disease was killing me, and I most probably would be dead. I don't know how much lower you have to go to be dead. You know what I'm saying? So we're all, and just like it says in the basic text, like the little old lady doing prescriptions from a doctor to the junkie snatching purchase, they buy their death, one pill, one fix, one hit, one drink at a time. What the hell don't you get the bottom line? Dead, finished. It doesn't matter. So that's why it's when we get clean, it's about hope, and that exact same principle works exactly in reverse. That we all have the exact same hope. We have the exact same positive thing that we can look forward to. I don't like spending too much time on the negative stuff. I think that, we need to help each other, and life is hard enough, and recovery is enough work, and our emotions are enough work without me trying to, beat myself up and make it worse. So anyway, I didn't, and as I said, I'm working on the first 3 steps. I'm working on step 4, and I'm really glad I'm here. And the things that got me here, I've worked a program, going to lots of meetings. I've always done some service work, usually on the group level, and sometimes at the area level. And whatever people can find, that's, I think, just coming to a meeting is service work. And the service work, both of those words are kind of service work, service work. They don't exactly inspire me, to be honest. I wish we could come up with better terminology, but service is really rewarding, and it feels pretty good. And a lot of the people that do it know what I'm talking about. There's a real positive feeling to seeing people benefit. And conversely, when people go back out and use, we learn to love each other. And I always tell people that come back from relapses, and I know this sounds like I'm just giving you shit, but it doesn't matter. What matters is today. You can work on your relapse with your sponsor, whatever. That's not important right now. The important thing is you're here, you're still alive, and you've got today to move forward. And there's no judgment. You can worry about as you work the steps, you can go back and figure out what happened, what you want to do different. But the big thing is now, start over. It's today. And I've said that to everybody. There's been chronic relapsers that I've said that to. And I just keep saying it, and I'm worried about you, but start over, and a lot of them make it, you know, and people sometimes don't, and people have a hard time, you know, and that's, I think one of the things that makes us card-carrying members of NA is that we hate to see it. We hate to see it happen. It's pretty heartbreaking when the disease brings people down. And anyway, so yeah, I'm glad I was able to share here, and I wish this group well. Groups are autonomous, and a group survives as long. I did the midnight meeting at Mill Street when I first got clean. I was clean 6 months, and I was the only person there a lot of nights on Friday night. Finally, after 6 months of being the only person there, I just went to area service because I was the GSR and the secretary and the treasurer, you know. And I went to area service after 6 months and said, "Hey guys, I've done everything I could. You know, nobody's coming." It's actually, what did I do? But it was, for me, it was important. I still remember jumping on my bicycle, I didn't drive, riding over to the near west side and reading the basic text for a half an hour. You know what I'm saying? I still remember doing it with a candle. I mean, I remember doing that, so I benefited from that meeting. But after, it wasn't a meeting, you know, and it was just me riding across town and reading the basic text with a candle. You know, and every now and then somebody would come, but anyway, so meetings they live and they die, just like everything else. And the energy of the meeting will go somewhere else. I mean, the people that would come here. So maybe people will come. Who knows? You know. But anyway, thanks for letting me share. I could definitely go on for a while, but it's an honor to share, you know, about what got me here and the hope that is what I wanted to try to get across, that we all have, and that we can also have hope, you know, for others, to try to share that hope with other people. You know, I don't know, we each do it to our own strength, how we do it, but you know, to get people that desire, you know, to hopefully they'll find that desire to stay here, and to do more than keep coming back. Don't leave, as a lot of people say sometimes. So anyway, glad I'm here, and I'll pass. Thanks.
Thanks, Charles.